Hello. We're live in Williams Lake on location with Cecilia DeRose and Sage Birchwater. We are here talking about One Arrow Left, the memoir of Secwepemc knowledge keeper Cecilia DeRose. Thank you both for joining us today.
It's our pleasure.
So this book just sort of recently came out within the last few months. Is that correct?
Correct.
So tell me a little bit about how it came to be. Like, how did you guys end up, working on this? What pulled it all together?
How did we start the book, Cecilia?
I can't even hardly remember why, or how, or you probably asked me.
Well, yeah, I did. Cecilia has a girlfriend, Barb Testowich, who got a hold of me on Facebook, the great Facebook that we all know and
That's
love.
how I got a hold of you.
Exactly. And she said, Cecilia's ready to tell her story. Well, I've known Cecilia for over 50 years. When I came here in 73, I got to know the DeRose family.
Oh, wow.
Because my neighbors down the alley were Dave and Neen Twan, and they were very dear friends of Cecilia and Lenny. So we've known each other. I worked with her daughter Dee Dee at the Friendship Center.
Okay.
Yeah, and on and on and on. Anyway, so I showed up at Cecilia's place and said, okay, let's start telling stories. And so she started telling her life story about growing up at a sket at Alkali Lake and by on a meadow by Lac La Hache. And what was the name of your meadow at Lac La Hache?
What is the name of our meadow?
Moose
Meadow.
Yeah. And how did you travel?
My dad called it Moose Meadow because he started the guiding out. He used to guide for Buster Hamilton on Lac La Hache side. So Buster told him to start his own guiding outfit on the other side of the mountain. So that's what my dad done.
Yeah.
He was a guide on that side of the mountain. Most of his hunters were from Seattle and Seattle and Washington.
And so what sort of area was he guiding through?
Well, we call it Moose Meadows, but I don't know what the.
It's on the east, on the west side of Lac La Hache.
Okay.
You know where Wright Station Road is?
Yeah.
Well, you'd go in that way and you'd get to Moose Meadow. It's probably partway down the lake, not that far, right?
No, not that far. Seems like forever, but it's not that far.
Yeah. So and Cecilia's mom and dad did not ever own a vehicle, so they traveled everywhere by horses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, horse and team and wagon, sleigh in the winter time. Yeah, he just applied for that meadow, and it was a, what do you call it, lease or whatever. So we just built a little cabin and spent our winters up there trapping and hunting and stuff like that. He had 100 hunters in the fall, mostly from Washington. Mm. And we stayed up there all winter. They trap and squirrels and muskrats and beavers and stuff like that.
I'm curious, what was life like when you were young, and what was your role in the family?
Pardon?
What was your role in the family when you were a young girl? Did you have a specific duty?
What was my role? Just about everything, anything. Sometimes we went with the hunters, like my brothers or whatever, when they'd go hunting, we'd go with them. Or just about anything a man can do.
So they cut hay, and Cecilia is one of 10 children.
Yes.
To Matthew and Cecilia Dick. She's the fourth child.
Okay.
I think there was Victorine was the first child, and then your brother.
Willard, and then Martha, then me. I was the fourth?
Yeah.
Yeah, fourth out of 10 children.
That's a good place to be because you have your elder siblings to teach you, and then you can pass that.
And then the younger ones to boss around.
Yeah, exactly.
So Cecilia was in charge of looking after her younger siblings after Martha and Willard went to school. Unfortunately, Victorine passed away at 10 years old from tuberculosis. So the numbers got reduced. But so when Martha and Willard went to the mission, Cecilia was the oldest kid at home. And she found it a drag to have to look after the babies.
Totally.
And she thought the mission might not be a bad option.
Yeah, because we were there 10 months of the year, from September till June. So we didn't. And later on, we went home on Christmas and Easter, but at first we didn't. We were there 10 months of the year.
So there's a whole section in the book about being at the mission, and a whole section in the book about before going to the mission and what you did in the summertime. And the haying crew was a very interesting part of the deal. And I think Cecilia could tell about the haying. What was it like to hay at the...
At home?
Yeah.
Well, everything was loose hay. My dad would cut it with a horse, and with the horse, the team of horses, cut hay with that. And then we cock it up, as we call it, put it in little stacks, and then we get the team in, I don't know what you call them.
Sleighs, I think they called them.
Yeah, sleigh.
Yeah.
And we'd pile it on that, and then my dad was a stack man, so we'd get the two edges together and hoist it up, and then he'd trip it wherever he wanted it on the stack. And till the stack was big enough, and then he'd start another stack.
So all the kids had a role to play. What was your job in the haying crew?
My two brothers would cut hay, and when it dried, my dad would put it in a row, and then we'd put it in small piles, so we'd put it onto the sleigh and then drive it to the stack. And my dad was the stack man, and my brother and his younger sister and my younger brother drove the team, and Martha and I, we'd pile it onto the sleigh. And my two brothers, one would be cutting hay, and the other brother would be
raking,
putting it in rolls. We all had a line of our work. Each one of us had a different work on making hay.
And you had two younger sisters and a younger brother. And what was their job when you kids were haying?
Yeah, well, two of them would drive team, and my two youngest, my brother Irene would be a driver, and my brother Bernard would be a driver.
No, I mean the younger ones.
The younger ones.
Because when you guys were thirsty.
Yeah, Richard and Willard would be cutting. One would be cutting hay, one would be raking. Two of us girls would be stacking it onto the sleigh load to go up to the stack. So one younger sister would be driving one team, and the other, my younger brother, would be driving the other team.
But I'm talking about Spick and Slug and Felix. What did they do? They brought you water, right?
Yeah, my brother, my mom always bought. They sold Freshie in little packages. Mm-hmm. So before we went to the meadows, she'd go to the lady that sold Freshie. She'd buy couple of cases of them, and that was our treat, Freshie. different flavors and different.
In June time, your mom and dad would meet you with a horse and wagon.
Yeah, when they picked us up in the summer, they'd meet us there, pick us up. Then we'd go to the meadow because it goes towards Lacklahassan up in the mountains there. So that was our meadows up there.
But did you go to the Stampede, and how did that go?
We went to the Stampede first and then went up the meadows to hay.
And then you went to Quesnel, too, because your dad had racehorses.
Yeah, my dad had racehorses, so we'd make the Stampede here and then go to Quesnel for the flat races up there.
Was there any gold panning in your family?
Pardon?
Was there any gold panning in your family?
No, there was no. None of my family wanted to be rich.
Well, you had to do it all by horse and wagon. So you went to Quesnel by horse and wagon?
Yeah.
And I was going to ask, like, that feels like that would be a fairly major undertaking. Like, how long a trip is that to go from, Lacklahash through Williams Lake up to Quesnel?
Yeah, well, they'd come to Alkali into Williams Lake. Then they'd go to the mission, pick us up for the summer. Then back to Williams Lake again. Then we'd camp in Soda Creek, and then we'd camp around McLeese Lake somewhere. That took a couple of days to get to Quesnel. Then my dad had racehorses, so he'd run his racehorses in Quesnel too.
And a couple of the kids would ride the racehorses up to Quesnel while you guys were in the wagon.
Yeah. The one.
I guess they would get there a lot quicker than the racehorses.
Everybody went together, but Cecilia never rode the racehorses. She wasn't a real racehorse.
My sister Martha, would ride one of the racehorses. I mean, I'd ride them up, but I never entered the races with them. But my sister Martha was a real good rider.
Yeah.
So she rode a couple of the racehorses. Most of the time it was my brothers.
But you had other horses for the hunters. And so your job, the other kids, was to ride the hunting horses to get them broke in so they were friendly to the hunters who were not very used to riding horses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'd sort of break in the horses for the hunters, because my dad would take out, like him and his brother at first were partners with the hunting, and my uncle Bert, 3 brothers were working on the hunting to get the hunting going, hunting and guiding going. But later on, when my brothers grew older, then they took over my uncle's job. So it was mostly just our family later on. Just my mom and dad and brothers and sisters that done the guiding and stuff for the hunters.
So whenever you went somewhere, the kids would be riding the horses and the wagon would be going. So there was a whole group of you that would go, if you went from Lacklahash to Esquette to Alkali Lake, there would be a whole group of you.
Yeah, there'd be five, 6 riders. Besides my mom and dad in the way. As soon as we got old enough, we didn't want to ride the wagon.
How many could ride the wagon? How many people?
Yeah, there was always a couple of younger ones that rode the wagon.
Yeah.
But
not the whole family necessarily in one wagon.
So my dad, that's the way he broke all his hunting horses and stuff like it for the...
Just using them day by day to sort of travel and...
Yeah, well, we'd go from Alkali to Moose Meadow, which was this end of the lake. You go straight up in there. That was Moose Meadow. Just our family was up there.
So it would take a day and a half to go from Alkali Lake to Moose Meadow. So you'd have to camp part of the way over there.
Yeah.
You talked about this with me earlier.
Well, I don't know how. Oh, we went back east. It was, what were they doing back
There was
in
a
19 sometime,
pilgrimage
a pilgrimage, yeah,
to Trois-Rivières, Quebec.
Oh,
in
wow.
Quebec, yeah.
And
All
it was a
a
Catholic deal.
Catholic thing.
And that's the prime
Yeah,
minister.
Saint Laurent. Yeah.
Louis
We
Saint Laurent.
stopped, yeah. Saint Laurent was the prime minister at that time, and we stopped at
Ottawa.
wherever it is,
Ottawa?
Ottawa, we just stopped there just to see that, just to have a look at the prime minister. I didn't think I was going to shake hands with him, but they picked me out of the crowd to shake hands with Saint Laurent.
Wow.
I think because I had my buckskin jacket on.
Right.
But you also have a beautiful smile and face. That could help too.
But yeah.
I have a feeling you were a very strong lady. You were probably a very strong lady. Still are.
You think so?
I know so. I see it. Yeah, that's a strong woman.
So there's a funny story associated with that, and that her girlfriend, who was at the time, Cecilia is 19 years old, and she's working at the mission.
She's 19 here?
Yes. After she got out of the mission, she and her sister went to work there, working in the kitchen, preparing food and stuff. And her girlfriend, Joan Beliveau, was the first non-nun school teacher at the mission.
Wow.
Yes, she was a teacher that was the first regular person to teach us. Always nuns teaching, brothers and nuns teaching. So she was the first.
So Joan had a big role in Cecilia's life because as Cecilia grew up, she dealt with racial prejudice in Williams Lake and wherever, where Indigenous people were not allowed in restaurants or in motels, hotels, and even they had a separate ward for them in the hospital if they even went.
That's terrible.
Even the priests were segregated. They had an quote Indian priest and they had a white person priest.
White.
You wouldn't want to get those prayers mixed up. That would be terrible.
Well, ironically, when Cecilia and Lenny got married, Lenny is a non-Indigenous man. He grew up in Wells.
Yeah.
The Indian priest couldn't marry them. They had to get the white priest to marry them at Esquette. But at least they married them at St. Teresa's Church in Esquette.
And
Right.
Is this like in the 50s?
Yes.
50s.
Yeah, so this is 54. They got married in, 56? So a couple years later.
56, yeah.
Anyway, Joan was a big person in Cecilia's life. Joan showed Cecilia that she's just as good as anybody else, no matter what their racial background is.
Totally.
She said, let's go to a movie or let's go to a restaurant. Tell us a bit about how Joan influenced you.
Yeah, and we told her that we couldn't go into restaurants or couldn't go to a movie, just had certain, and then in a movie house you only sat in a certain place. He didn't let you sit anywhere where you wanted. You had to sit in a certain place.
Terrible.
Yeah, and in a restaurant you weren't allowed in restaurants. Yeah, because you were First Nations, you weren't allowed to eat in restaurants.
And now in Kamloops, there are Indigenous restaurants selling bannock. So
Yeah.
it's nice to see that.
Yeah, now they can, but in those days they didn't.
Yeah.
Bannock was a yuck.
So on this trip back east, they wanted a lot of Indigenous people to go on this pilgrimage, right? And originally, Cecilia and her sister Martha signed up to go. But then what happened? Martha
decided not to go, so my friend Joan said, well, she'll go in Martha's place. So Martha loaned her buckskin jacket, and away we went.
and her ID.
Yeah, right.
Was someone pretending to be someone else?
And then we had to catch the train from Prince George and and head east.
And they
Well-
they got to Winnipeg, eh?
Yeah.
And then took a bus from there.
Right.
Yeah, and then the bus picked the rest of us this way. All the Indians arrived in Winnipeg, and then the buses came and took them to Quebec.
Would that have been the first time you ever traveled by train or bus?
We traveled by train mostly before, here, there,
Yeah.
here to Kamloops, here to Vancouver and stuff, or here to Prince George. But we never traveled all the way, out of our province.
Yeah.
It was the first time out of our province.
You were given a Doctor of Letters by Thompson Rivers University in Kamloops. And you had to give a talk to the graduating class. Because another sidebar is that Cecilia's daughter, Dee Dee, is the chancellor of TRU.
Oh.
So Cecilia's first job, or Dee Dee's first job, was to bestow a doctorate on her mother.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so
So in the book, you told the graduating class at the convocation, you told the graduating class what?
there's one arrow left, and it's education. That's our arrow that's left. So use or do your education. That's the only way we're going to get by in the world, is education.
And when you say we, you're referring to sort of indigenous people. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm from Esquette, which is the Alkali Lake, and I'm Shuswap from the Shuswap Nation, and I still speak my language. And I didn't teach my kids my language because my husband was white.
Mm-hmm.
They know some, and they understand what people are saying when they're speaking Shuswap, but they can't speak it. So
Was it challenging over the years to sort of hang on to your language?
yeah, because English, like even our school, like the residential school, we weren't allowed to use our language, so we had to speak English. If they caught us using our language, they punished us.
And then if it's not, being used and taught, there's a concern of it just kind of vanishing.
Yeah, because there's a lot of silent language in our language. So the younger kids never picked that up. So
Silent language? What do you mean?
kind of a silent language.
Like sign language?
Yeah, not sign language, but just the way you express it or whatever. You don't have to answer in words.
Like body
You could
language?
Answer body language.
Oh,
So most of that was lost.
And there's glottal stops. So you say a word Secwepemc. How do you say Secwepemc? I probably don't say it right.
Secwepemc, yeah, you're close.
You hear that?
Yeah.
At the end, so that's almost a silent, non-English sound that you make. Eh? I forget to say that. I don't-
it's kind of like a French.
yeah.
Yeah,
so
a little
weapon.
similar to.
Yeah. She did a very interesting thing. During COVID, she was worried that the Secwepemc language would get lost
Yeah.
with her family. So you came up with names with Secwepemc names for all of your family. Grandkids, great-grandkids, children. How did that go?
And pretty good, but we still don't call them that yet. They still went back to their regular names, but
But in the back of the book, we have the list of all the kids' Secwepemc names.
Yes, you have the family tree in here. It seems like that's amazing.
So there was a whole ceremony of
Yes.
giving the
Cecilia's-
names and gifts. Like Cecilia made all these presents for the kids,
Wow.
little buckskin things sewn up.
Was it a challenge to sort of dig through your memories to find the stories to share in this, or did you find that it sort of came back fairly fairly quickly, fairly easily.
Mostly came back. Mostly came back as I wrote the story, you know.
Like one story would lead to another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we would record the story, and then I would transcribe it, and then I would bring it to Cecilia. We'd go over it together, and then she'd offer corrections, and then we'd talk about the next phase of her life, you know, growing up with 10 siblings, for example. And
So you'd often use sort of like the previous story that you spoke of to sort of springboard to the next and on.
yeah.
And on. How long did it take from when you guys first sat down to start working on it to when it was ready to go to the publisher, would you say?
Well, it was 2 years pretty much. And Cecilia, she's 90 now. We started when she was 88, and she had a health issue, and we weren't sure if we were going to be able to continue or not, but she got better, and we carried on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You're so resilient. You're very resilient. Yeah.
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 I suppose.
That's one way to look at it. And how did you feel when it was all said and done and you saw, you know, a reflection of your life in these pages?
I could have told more, but I guess what they weren't. I probably thought they weren't that important to put into. But I think I was all right with it.
Yeah.
One of the really neat things, like Cecilia says, there's more stories that could have been told.
Yeah.
And stuff she'd remember later, like all of these kinds of stories are like that. So she was talking about riding in the wagon, and there was some kids on horseback, and the last kid on the horseback hit a beehive.
Oh, wow.
No, the first ones hit the beehive, and the last one got all the stings.
Got the reaction.
So her mother immediately came up with a medicine for that was right there.
No way. What?
Yeah, right by the lake, there's a bunch of certain kind of willows by Phililo Lake. We're just coming along Phililo Lake there. So she told us to quickly strip the leaves off the
rose bush.
willows and chew it and slap it on.
Oh, wow.
On all.
And it worked?
Yeah, it worked. Yeah. Her face was already half swollen, but she said it'll keep it from swelling more. And her eyes were even shut. The beast just got, well, as soon as we got to ride a horse, we always rode a horse. There was always 5, 6 riders. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she was the last one, so she got most of the stings.
So that story didn't make it in the book, but we get to tell it later.
Yeah. Well, and with, mentioning stories that didn't make it in the book, is there any consideration at all of maybe going back for another one, or are you done with sharing your stories that way?
I don't know. I'll have to read the whole thing to see.
She's still reading it.
Yeah, fair enough.
She isn't quite sure. The jury's still out yet.
You got to finish the book before you decide whether it needs a sequel.
Yeah. I have to see what I wrote.
So, I guess one of my last questions is, where can people find the book? If somebody watching this wants to pick up a book, where can they do that?
In Williams Lake, we're lucky. We've got about 6 places 6 outlets: Save On Foods, Station House Gallery, the Open Book, the Tourist Information Center, the Caribou Friendship Center has a arts and crafts place. Other people, you can request it. It's published by Caitlin Press.
Okay.
And your favorite bookstore, go in and ask for it, and they'll snag it for you, I'm sure. Figure a way of getting it to you.
Nice. Well, thank you guys both so much for coming and chatting with us today. I've definitely appreciated having the opportunity to learn more about the book, learn more about your story, and, hopefully everyone watching at home has appreciated it as well.
And give credit to Sage Birchwater.
Yeah, absolutely.
You did a wonderful job
Yeah, thank you.
On this book.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, we're doing a slideshow at Sugarcane,
Okay, sure.
Williams Lake First Nation, on the 28th at noon.
Okay.
Okay.
And we're going to, all the images that are in the book will be on the slideshow. So
Nice.
Oh, good.
Will there be like a talk as well?
yes,
or-
yes, Cecilia will be there and we'll be telling stories,
Fantastic.
just like now.
Justin
Yeah.
Trudeau's girlfriend will be there.
Yes.
Yes, yes, but don't tell, well,
Oh, Katy Perry?
Doesn't matter now.
yeah, I know.
Anything else that we haven't touched on that you want to share before we wrap up? Or
Do you want to say hi to your kids or your grandkids?
Turn.
Do you want to say hi to your kids or your grandkids?
Okay. Hi to all of the Rose kids and all of my grandchildren from Kia. And be good.
Be good.
yes, be good. Always.
Grandma says so. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
I had
you.
a lot of fun.
Cook's,
Yeah,
Cook's
nice
Gem.
meeting.
Cook's Gem.
Cook Sesame.
Do you want to say something in your language?
Hey,
Do you want to
I
say?
thank you.
You want to say thank you
Sesame.
That's what that means?
Yeah.
one more time? Say it again.
Cook Sesame.
Kushitshim.
Or Cook Sesame is just thank you. Or thank you, I guess. But Cook Sesame, I thank you.
Wow, that is a hard language. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you both.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.